Hello, we're here at the Lost Shore Surf Resort in Edinburgh. I'm with Alex Cole-Hamilton, the Scottish Liberal Democrat leader, about to go surfing with him. Not a sentence I ever thought I'd hear myself say, but we're just a few weeks out from the Holyrood election, and we thought it'd be a good idea to try and sort of see what makes the Scottish party leaders tick, and what better way to do that than to take part in some of their own hobbies and interests. So that's why we're here. Alex says he's a good surfer. Someone who's done this many times before.
Yeah, I've done it many times before. I've been surfing probably 25 years, but I'm kind of like 3 or 4 times a year guy. But it is absolutely my happy place, and when this place opened just 10 miles from my house, oh my word, I was in heaven. And I've come here, I come here whenever I can, always take a lesson from the guys here. They're really great, they're very forgiving, because it can be brutal out there. You've been warned.
I'm about to learn that, because I've never surfed in my life, to be honest. It's not something I've ever contemplated doing. I'm going to have a beginner lesson, watch to find out what happens, as well as to hear from Alex and some of the big issues facing his party ahead of that election on May 7th. It'll take me a while.
And it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And it can be, the first time I did this, right, I thought, right, I don't need an improver lesson, I know how to surf. And it destroyed me. I caught like 2 waves in an hour, and I was just ruined, just paddling.
Really good exercise.
So the improver lesson is so good.
It's quite lippy, isn't it?
Yeah,
so it's nice to have a bit of a push.
Yeah.
It's nice to know, like, all of the leading stuff.
Yeah, you want to be able to catch that wave.
Yeah. But when we're going out, I'll tell you the tricks.
Okay. That was probably the most fun I've ever had on an election campaign trail. It was exhausting.
Are you a convert?
Yeah, I'm a convert. Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. Really hard work. But we've got to talk about politics now.
Absolutely.
Politics part of it. I've got the sheet of paper here. It's very unprofessional, but I just didn't want to get my phone wet.
Fair enough.
Could you do the Lib Dem pitch in 3 issues that are core to your party in this election?
Yeah, Scotland's got so much going for it, but so much isn't working right now, particularly around the crisis in our health service, which we want to fix by sorting social care because of the 2,000 Scots who are stuck in hospital every night who would be able to get home if there was a care package to receive them or a care bed in their care home. That then would relieve the interruption in flow in accident emergency cancelled operation. Sorry, it's a big issue though, Alistair, don't cut me short on that. Then lifting up education. Scottish education back to its best by taking mobile phones out of classrooms, putting people support assistance in, and getting Scotland moving again. Big third issue, driving down the cost of living. We want to cut fuel duty by 10p per litre or 12p per litre, and we want to insulate cold Scottish homes and bring down energy bills with renewable power.
So I think I'm right in saying there's 10 seats where the Lib Dems think they can defeat the SNP. What are those seats, and which do you think are the closest?
So I think we are there or thereabouts, as in over the line in all of them. I think we've got the beating of the SNP. We're speaking to thousands of people every week, and those seats are the 4 held seats, of course, which are the Northern Isles, Edinburgh North Western and North East Fife. But then from north to south, Caithness, Inverness and Nairn, Skylock Harbour, Badenoch, Argyll and Bute, I think could be the surprise of the night. Strathkelvin and Bearsden, which, remember, Eastern Berkshire is much the same seat. We won it with 10,000 votes in 2024, and the new seat of Edinburgh Northern. So across those 10 constituencies, we've got the beating of the SNP, but wherever you are, for the first time in a long time, the polling suggests we can take a massive leap forward on that second regional ballot paper, and everyone can enjoy the benefits of a Lib Dem MSP.
There's been lots of talk for a long time now about potential Labour-Liberal Democrat coalition. You look at the recent polls, that seems very unlikely to happen. I was looking at one of the weekend, actually, and I think combined your 2 parties only had 31 seats. Do you think that without the possibility of that coalition, the Liberal Democrats are sort of irrelevant?
No, not at all. I mean, first and foremost, it feels like the tide's coming in, doesn't it? First and foremost, there's no pacts or alliances with Labour. We are up for change that shares our values. That might include Labour, it might not, but we're not going to do a deal with the SNP, we're not going to do a deal with Reform or Tories. So I'm just focused on getting as many Lib Dem MSPs elected. As for relevance, one thing is clear, is that, in a parliament of minorities, we know how to make our voices heard. That is why we have dragged the SNP to some massive budget commitments in the last 2 budgets, whether that is on £178 million on business rates, whether that's on social care workers, on hospices, on support for babies, the 1,500 babies who've been born addicted to drugs since 2017 or 2015. So with the Lib Dems, you will always get people that will roll up their sleeves, work for your community and make a difference in Parliament.
You've always talked about how you're close friends with Anna Sarwar, or you're close political friends anyway, you get on.
Yeah.
Is there anyone in Parliament...
actual friends. I don't think there's any problem with being friends with your adversaries. Absolutely.
Is there anyone in Parliament you don't get on with? Anyone you hate?
No, there's nobody I hate.
Yeah. What about just don't get on with?
Of course. I mean, and I think some of those disputes are a matter of public record. But I think there are a lot of people in other parties who probably wouldn't cross the road to spit on me if I was on fire. But listen, that's just not who I am. I'm always up for laying aside differences and finding the best in people and working with the people of Scotland. That sounds cheesy, doesn't it? But that's how I feel.
I was interested in the fact that it was a Liberal Democrat MSP, Liam Carper, who brought forward those assisted dying plans. That was voted down last month. You backed it. You made quite an emotional speech in the Scottish Parliament about that. Would you like to see assisted dying legislation brought back in the next Parliament?
I think for as long as there are Scots who are deprived a good death, then this will remain an unanswered question. Palliative care is amazing, but not everybody gets it. But this is not mutually exclusive. I think everyone should have access to palliative care and everyone should have access to assisted dying. We have rights that govern every aspect of our lives, save one, and that's our departure from it. So, of course, those of us who passionately support the idea of assisted dying legislation will need to, dust ourselves off, take a breath, see what the new Parliament brings, because with every Parliament, it feels like the majority gets nearer and nearer for that. But, at the same time, I think it's important that we draw breath and we learn from this experience and look to it. But there are very few issues where politicians are so out of step with public opinion.
Yeah.
But this is one, because, successive polling shows that as many as 80% of the public think that you should be, if you are nearing the end of your life anyway, and you're beyond the reach of palliative care, you should have the right to say this far and no further.
But the next Parliament, do you not think that would be too soon?
No, well, not if there's a majority for it, and we can finally bring Parliament into step with the rest of the public.
Yeah. So you could see it getting brought back in this Parliament?
I would hope it would be brought back in the next Parliament.
You would hope it would be?
Yeah.
What about you as a person to bring that legislation forward?
I think this is so much bigger than individuals, and I would be very proud and very humbled to be chosen to be the parliamentarian to bring it forward. But it needs to be somebody who can unite people, and it's bigger than personalities. And I would want to be sure that I was the best person to do that. And I think sometimes, certainly in the past, I've been quite a divisive character, and I wouldn't want that to cloud people's judgment. So.
There's lots of talk at the moment that Holyrood needs reform, it needs change. It's not working effectively at the moment. It's not scrutinising things as well as it could be. What do you think is the biggest reform that Holyrood could have right now to improve it?
So I think the biggest problem for Holyrood right now was twofold. Firstly, the voting system. I want to see SCV for the Scottish Parliament, because there's a likelihood now that you could have an SNP getting near or thereabouts on a majority on just 35% of the vote. That would be a democratic outrage, absolutely outrageous. So I think if you get to STV for the Scottish Parliament, that's one thing. But the second thing is the committee structure, because without a revising chamber, we don't have a House of Lords, we don't have a Senate, we don't have an upper chamber, and the committees were meant to be that. But at the moment, because those committees mirror the shape of the Parliament, if there is a coalition or a majority government, then the government holds sway on all of those committees. It doesn't do its job. And we saw that in that term when the SNP had a full majority with where they were marking their own homework. Yeah. And you get bad legislation. So I'd like to see a reform of the committee system as well.
I think it's fair to say that people are very scunnered with politics at the moment. I mean, I speak to people who are outside the Holyrood bubble, who talk about how fed up they are with politicians. They don't know who they're going to vote for in May. Some of them probably aren't going to vote at all. Why do you think people are so fed up with politics? And do you think politicians should take some of the blame for that?
Well, I think absolutely. I mean, we need to, in politics, reach for the better natures of the people that send us to Parliament. And that doesn't always happen. I mean, look at the nature of the first 2 weeks of this campaign. It's all been about candidates being suspended, potential cover-ups around some serious criminal behaviour. I mean, why is this in any way a good advert for our politics? Now, I'm delighted that our vetting process is as such. We've not had to suspend candidates, but it's not to say it couldn't ever happen. And that's why two things Lib Dems want to see is, first and foremost, a recall act for the Scottish Parliament, so that constituents can bring in MSPs that have been found to do wrong and subject them to a recall ballot. And we also want to see disclosure checks for politicians. I mean, I just think it's absolutely insane that we as politicians, who in our casework surgeries and our work experience we offer school kids, have ready access to children and vulnerable adults, yet require no police checks whatsoever. Now, I was a youth worker for 19 years, and every youth work job I ever had required that of me, and rightly so. We want to know that our politicians are safe to be around children and vulnerable adults, because with the privilege of the office of being an MSP comes a lot of leverage and power and opportunity. And we can't just assume, and very sadly, there's been examples where in quite recent times, politicians have been found to not reach the standards we would expect of them.
Part of my paper here, we've mentioned reform of Parliament, we should mention the other reform, the political party, Nigel Farage's Reform UK. I wondered why you thought they were doing so well. I mean, they've come from nowhere, potentially going to get, upwards of upwards of a dozen, potentially around 20 MSPs. Why do you think, what do you think is behind their success? And do you think that racism is playing a part at all, as some of their critics would say?
So I think they've come from nowhere, and to know where they will return, because we're already starting to see that as they're exposed to scrutiny and the white heat of the election campaign, they're coming apart at the seams. I mean, I have never seen a more shambolic start to an election campaign. Laying aside Lord Offord's outrageous and homophobic and racist joke, they've lost 5 candidates. They've had to suspend candidates. And they've not turned up for photo calls and things like that. And I think, at the end of the day, part of politics is trusting the people, and I always trust the people. I think they will see through the sham politics of reform and send them packing. And I really do think they're still overpriced. They've still got further to fall. And I understand why people have been looking at them. And I think that the reality of that is that they're tired of the old parties, the old way of doing politics, and they're looking for something new. And given the exposure, the rampant exposure that reform has had in the media, and the magic that Farage brings to the controversy he brings to everything he touches, and people are looking at them. But they don't have to settle for that mean-spirited worldview. There is another option, and that vision of change with fairness in its heart. It's not just in those 10
But you're part of that old political order, though. I mean, that's you that these people are sick of.
No, not at all. We've been an insurgent force, and I think we were the surprise, untold story of the general election, or unexpected story of the general election, where we came in, had our best result in 100 years, biggest third party in a century, overtook the Tories in Scotland, came within touching distance of the SNP, trebled our seats. And that, I think, shows the insurgency back in the wind in our sails, and that people listen to us again and willing to give us a fair hearing.
Just finally, you've spoken quite candidly in the past about the impact of the abuse you've faced in politics, that all politicians face, the kind of counselling that you've received, or I think almost kind of resilience coaching. Yeah. Do you think that there's a lot of talk with this election that it could be one of the most brutal and bitter in Holyrood's history, and potentially the next Parliament could be quite a bitter place as well? Do you think politics is becoming increasingly toxic in Scotland? I
think it has the potential to be very toxic if we let it. But that is why I've resolved to fight this campaign as positive as I can. And you'll see that in our social media output. We're having a lot of fun. We're injecting a lot of colour. I'm trying to make time for myself personally to be with my family, to do things like this. And thank you for your largesse in making that happen. But listen, politics is a brutal game. It can be a blood sport, but only if we let it. And I think that, as I said before, it's incumbent on us to reach for the better nature of the people who send us to Parliament, to find common ground where we can, that's why the Lib Dems have shown, in working with others, we're prepared to get stuff done, even if it means laying aside old tribal differences and striking a deal. And that matters to people. I think that people get so fed up of the kind of name calling and the mudslinging and the dark arts of politics. It doesn't need to be like that. I mean, for the Lib Dems, people ask me what a Lib Dem is. And I tell them, give them two examples. There's the local and the global. And the local side of things, Kemi Badenoch said of us, what's a Lib Dem? Well, a Lib Dem is someone who turns up and fixes your church roof. Yeah, absolutely. That's us, guilty. And we're communitarians. We sweat the small stuff. We make sure your potholes are filled and your bins are collected. But at the same time, we think globally as well. We reach for policy that helps people half a world away that we will never meet. There are victims of injustice and persecution and climate change and war. And think about our position in this global village that we live in. And I think, if you can frame your offer around that local concern and that global empathy, that's you standing where most of the country are. This is a country of good and decent people with internationalist outlook. I have so much faith. That's why reform doesn't worry me.
Alex Cole-Hamilton, thank you very much. I'm absolutely Baltic. So
I can see you looking very cool. It's looking very cool.